In this tutorial, we'll take a look at the Quotations module in JobPro, including requests for quotes or RFQ functionality that's also built into that module. So here we're on the home screen, and in the quick view area we can also select to see any quotes that are currently open on the system, where they can default to the current user or default to an identity as well if you've got multi-companies or multi-stores or departments within the one organization. So this is a quick way of getting to any current quotations that are open on the system. So let's create a new quotation. Now quotations can actually be created from multiple places, from within quotations like here, or you might have a sales inquiry in the inquiries module where you can create quotes from an inquiry, or you can create a quote from a customer screen either in companies or contacts, or you could create a quote from a job, for example. So different places that you might need or want to create a quotation from. So let's just create a blank one here, and then we'll select a customer. We could also change the shipping address for this quote as well if we need to. Multiple addresses can be set up for customers in the company and contacts records. So also we could link this quote to a job, or we can also create a job from the quotation if it gets approved as well. So the top part of the screen is very much about who the customer is, contact details, the status of the quote. We can also specify in setup that every quotation you create, whether you refer to it as an estimate, a proposal, or a quotation, but you can also set a record to be a pro forma. So the pro forma functionality is actually at the quotation level. Previously in other versions of JobPro it used to be at the sales invoice level, but the more correct place for it is quotations, because theoretically it is still a quotation, but you can refer to a quotation as a pro forma if a customer asks you specifically for a pro forma with the details on it, so maybe organising the payment or the order on their end. You can do that within this system. So over on the right hand side we can specify when the due date is for these items or for this quote, payment terms from the customer, which usually defaults from the customer's account record, who the representative is internally here, and if we want to change the identity, if you've got multiple identities in the system, you can do that from here as well. It also has a stock location. So if you have multiple stock locations, you can change the stock location that the goods on this quotation will be removed from. If you don't have multiple stock locations, well then this doesn't actually appear here, because maybe you just sell services as opposed to products. So there's a full video tutorial on how to track stock locations in the system, how you set up stock locations, and how multiple stock locations are used throughout the system. So then down the bottom of the screen is where we can specify what items, services or products are just manually entered in descriptions we're including on this quotation. So let's say for example we want to add a product to the quote. We'll add a line and then we click into the code field. So in here we might select a particular item. We can see the cost price and the sell price. We could put in a quantity. We can also, if stock is relevant, we can look at a stock view and we can see that there's 17 available at this particular stock location, or 17 in stock, but there's 7 available, probably because there's 10 on sales orders. We can also see that there's quantity on purchase orders as well, but you do have the ability to create a PO from here if you need to. So also at the line item level we can see our markup and margin in here. Another feature in quotations is that you can drill down to the line item level and you can specify the costings. You know, what makes up a line item on a quotation. So in this case, if we look at this, basically we're just looking at a line item for a product. So we're not actually going to break down the costings on a line item here. But we do have the ability to say add another line item, and we could manually type in a description of something that you're going to do or sell for this customer. It could be services or products or a mixture of both. So we could put in any sort of description there, and then we want to specify a quantity. So we'd say 5, and then if we click on the arrow here, we can build what makes up the costings for this particular item on this quote. So there's a few ways this can be done. The first way is we create a line, and we just create a blank line, and we can type in a description, anything at all. And we can say one of these per unit, and that it's going to cost us for this item, we'll say €10 or $10, whatever your currency is. And then over here we can see the quantity available is not relevant because it's not a stock item. But then the next option we have, if we want to build our costings or bill of materials, we also have the ability to select from a product, from the products module. So by doing this, if we select an item that is like, say, a component, like a raw material or a costing, it adds that item in here. We can see then that we've got a problem with stock because there's actually none available for this particular item. So we need to deal with that at a stock level or at a product level. Now, we can also add in an item from the products module. And if we add an item that is made up of like a bill of materials or costings, let's pick an example here. Finished product. It asks us then, this item is made up of costings. Add the finished item as a cost or the costings themselves. So let's say we select costings. What that does is it splits out into multiple lines what makes up that finished product. So basically this is useful if you want to see all the different elements that you need to put together to make up this line item on the quote. And it splits out all the costs and gives you your total cost. So the other option was that when we selected the product, that we selected it as a finished product, and what that would have done is just added in as a single line with the overall cost. So there's different ways that you can build your bill of materials or your costings for the line item to get your true costs for that line item. And then you click on return, and in here then we can base our sell price from our costings that we've already entered in the costing screen. Also in quotations, and the same as in sales orders and invoices, you can refresh the sell prices if items are linked to suppliers in the products module. So if you've entered, say, a number of items in here, and maybe you've gone into the products module and update the most up-to-date pricing, you can then refresh the pricing in here by clicking on this label at the top, but we'll cancel from that. Also, in all the different financial modules, you have the ability to print a transaction like a quote in different currencies. So it'll default the rate from the rate currency table in setup, or you can manually change the rate in here as well if you like. So if we have a quick look at the text entry on this quotation, now basically we're looking at the same line items but just in a more textual base. So if you usually enter in paragraphs of text on an item, well then this method might be easier for you. But technically it's actually the same lines, just this option showing more space, where you'd have to scroll down if you've got more than 2 lines on the quote. So the next feature I'm going to show is the RFQ, or the request for quotes functionality, linked into the quotations module. So the first option is that, let's say you want to purchase or get pricing from your suppliers for a particular item on a quote. It could also be like outsourcing work or anything related to a quote. So we'll click on the little plus button relating to this item or this product, and from here we can create as many estimate requests to suppliers as we like. So let's create one. We'll then link it to a supplier, and we can change who the contact is for the supplier. We can include the name of the line item on the RFQ. We can include our own signature, like a scanned signature. We can specify the tender deadline that we need the quote back from. When the quote does come back, we can put in the quote ref from the supplier and the price that they have given for that item. We can also include any amount of details on the request as well, like if you want to type in some details that are going to print out or go on the emailed PDF for the RFQ. And then you can click on print RFQ from here, and it'll have the details on it, including the signature from setup under the communication setup screen, where you can set up scanned signatures for all users. Okay, so back here then, we also have the ability to create a purchase order from this estimate request. So if we decide to go with this supplier for the price that they've quoted, we can create a PO from here, and that PO will be linked to the quote as well as the RFQ, and it'll use the price for that item on the new PO. We can also print RFQs in multiple languages as well if relevant. So let's return back to the RFQ screen, where we can create multiple RFQs for that particular item to different suppliers. So then you can then compare the price quoted in here and choose the one that you want to go with. So let's go and return back to the quote itself. So you can see then that the icon has changed because we've created an RFQ for that line item. But we also can click on an RFQ tab, and any items that are linked to this particular quote for different suppliers we can see in here. So maybe what we should do is just create a new line item for a particular product, and then create an RFQ for that, link it to a supplier. We can enter in some details, but let's just return back and go to the RFQ tab. So we can see any RFQs relating to any items on this quotation, where we can print all RFQs from here, instead of basically having to drill down at the line item level and do it from there. We can also print the RFQs from here as well. And we can also see if there's any late RFQs coming in. So we could do a search and find on anything that's late. So that'll find across all quotations in the system for any RFQs that maybe we need to follow up on. Also, any RFQs that are created in the system, if we're looking at a supplier screen, for example, we're in a supplier, we can click on the RFQs tab, and we can see then any RFQs current or complete that are in the system, and we can see here that some of the deadlines have been passed for RFQs. But let's go back into the quotes module. So that covers the RFQ functionality in the system. Also in the quotes module, we've got a documents tab. So you might want to link documents relating to a quote in here, maybe supporting documentation like details that you put it into an Excel spreadsheet, or PDFs relating to products, anything at all that are relating to that quote, you can link documents to this quotation. And when you link a document, you can link it to an existing document or to a new document. Further information on the Documents module is covered in separate video tutorials. So on the other tab in Quotations, we've got various options like including comments on the quote, and these comments can be defaulted in Setup, where you can specify the default comments that you want on every quote that you create in the system, where you can edit those comments then on the quotation. Also, you can specify, creating facts, putting a heading on the quotation, including a signature on the quotation. Again, this is an option that you can default to include the signature on a quotation. Include a sign-off section on the quotation, or use your own letterhead. So if you want to print on pre-printed stationery, for example, you can click that option here. And depending on the option selected, when you print a quotation, it'll have different options here, like it's including the sign-off section. We're not including the signature, so it doesn't show that here. But if we were, then we'd see the signature there. So also we've got communications related to this quotation appearing down here. Like it could be, for example, just generating a note relating to this quotation. Maybe you've done a follow-up and you want to record a note or a conversation. Or, for example, you might have created a phone call from this quotation as well. And that will appear in here. By clicking on the phone icon here, you can use either Skype or the Asterisk phone software to create phone calls from JobPro. And then over on the right hand side of this tab, we've got commission related area where we can specify commission at the quotation level. So you've also got this functionality in sales orders and sales invoices. But if you do want to give commission on approved quotations, you can do that in this system by specifying the name and the sale amount, or manually entering in the cost of sale as well. So any of these figures coming from the actual quotation can be manually overridden. Usually you just leave the defaults that coming from the line item information. That shows you then your profit from a commission point of view. So we can say, based on this particular person, then their rate would be X amount, and we can base that commission then on the profit or the sale amount. So let's just put in 10%, for example. And we can specify also whether it's been paid or not. So on the options tab, which we're going to take a look at in a second, there are various commission reports available as well. So then on the bottom of the other tab, we've got custom fields that you can specify in Setup, what you call custom 1, 2 and 3 for the Quotations module. On the list screen in the Quotes module, you can have a look at the found set of records in a list view, where you can see financial information, sort on company, on type, etc. Print the list. And also on the options tab in Quotes, there are various options including find options, customer report options, reports by products, whether they're detail or summary, reports by category as well, and also commission related reports. And then in the middle of the screen, for the current quotation, we can do various things like print the quotation. There's also multiple print options for a quotation, where you can look at a quotation, and here's the standard quotation, where you've got the price, quantity, subtotal, the tax, VAT or GST rate, again the amount there, and the total. But there are 3 other options for printing a quote, where you can exclude the quantity and price columns. So here we don't have the breakdown over on the right hand side, we only have them at the bottom. We can include the category headings. So if the line items on a quote have categories entered on them, well then it'll create a heading for each category and then each line item under the category with the category as headings. So we can also then print a quotation that only includes the category as a heading and doesn't include the line items themselves. So for example, let's look back at here and we'll set a couple of categories onto these items. Now they mightn't be exactly relevant categories, but just to give you an idea, we'll say 2 of them are for the same category and 1 is different. So now when we go to print this, include category headings, what that does is it breaks down a heading for the first category with 2 different items on it, and then the second category with 1 item on it. And then the last option for printing is where it only includes the category on its own and not all the detail. So that's useful if you don't want to give the customer a breakdown of all the line items on a quote. Also on the options screen, there's the ability to email the quotation, or I'll print or email the quotation with different languages. Print labels, or print a label using the shipping address. Create email, letter, faxes. Also you can create a job from a quote, or create a job and generate the budget and or assembly details. So for example, if you wanted to create a job from a quote and group together all the items on the quote by their category, it'll generate then separate budget items or budget categories on the new job. And also, if any items on the quote are basically like finished products that you want to assemble using components or raw materials, and you've already specified in the products module how those finished items are broken down or how they're made up, well then if you create a job using the assembly details, it will actually then on the assembly tab on the job screen have a breakdown of all the components that make up the finished items. So that's very useful as well if you need to use that. You can also duplicate a current quotation. That's useful if you regularly give quotations to customers, even if they're different customers, with the same items on it, same line items. So what you can do is you can duplicate a quotation and you could change then who the customer is on that quotation. Or alternatively, you can use this option if the customer comes back and says, yeah, I like that quote, but I want you to add items to it, or maybe change some items on that initial quote. Well, then you can duplicate it but create a new revision. So what that does is it sets the original quote, the status, to be amended, and it creates a new quote, and you'd leave the same customer on it, but you can just amend that then. And that's useful so that you can see a track of the different quotes that evolved until you had an approved quote for that customer. We can also, from a quotation, create a sales order, create an invoice, or create a purchase order from the quotation as well. And for the found set of quotations, we can print the records, print them in the different options as well, or we can print a mini list. We can print labels for the current found set of quotations, or print labels using the shipping address for the current found set of quotations. So that covers the quotations functionality, but also if you are, for example, looking at a customer record, which could be in the company record, or the company module, or the contacts module, because you can have customers in both. And so let's say we do a find on customers, and here we are looking at a customer and we're looking at the quotes tab. So this shows you any previous quotations for that customer, where you can view those quotations from here, or you can create a quotation from here. Same functionality if you're looking at a job. So if a job was created from a quote, or you have multiple quotes linked to a job, you'll be able to see those from here. So I'm just looking for a record. Here's one here that has a quote linked to it. So that covers the quotations functionality throughout the JobPro system.